After decades of globalization, countries are coming to learn that being dependent on another country for your goods may not be the smartest move for sovereign independence. Germany has learned that relying on Russia for all of its natural gas made them vulnerable. America has learned the same thing with having China produce the majority of its products. And now China, which America has in large part helped grow, use of dollars paid to it by the US to buy US debt, to buy US homes, to start US businesses, to influence politics and culture to benefit China. The Middle East has done the same with oil. And now, US dollars are spread all over the world and have made many countries vastly wealthy compared to what they were before. And with US dollars being used as the world's reserve currency, the US could easily print more and more money and distribute it around the world in return for influence, power, and respect. Being in debt doesn't mean much when anyone would buy that debt with more dollars. Now these producing countries want to modernize and live the Western life. And it's harder to get young adults who, because of social media, see life the way the rich countries live, to work in those horrible conditions for low wages. China, because of its extreme control on the population, has been able to avoid this in large part. Although you do see riots such as in the Apple plants, when workers were unable to leave for weeks to go back home and see their families. The Chinese Communist Party's brutal control of the population, combined with the lack of freedom of speech, introduction of social credit scores, and facial recognition cameras everywhere, seems to be the last bastion of forced human labor on a scale only rivaled by Africa and its mines. So here we are. War in Ukraine, war in Israel, Iran and North Korea unfriendly as ever to the US and Western countries. China and India experiencing economic growth. Europe and America being attacked by leftist wokeness. The world seems to be in complete disarray. Government trust in the US is at all-time lows. Organizations such as the World Economic Forum and the United Nations have taken this opportunity to set the foundation to gain control over whole countries by using influence and money to indoctrinate world leaders, to invite the rich to their forums to partake in the boys club, to be better than everyone else, to create a new class of global elites, with the offer of complete world domination and power. The World Economic Forum, being the largest globalist organization, is spearheading this takeover. But how do you take over the entire world? With technology. Tracking every action you take, every word you speak, every destination you travel to, every food you eat, and plot all this data into an algorithm that tells you if you are living the correct way, with punishments for deviating from the norm. We see this happening in China, where citizens are given a social credit score, with what you do determining your score. Buy too much alcohol, your score goes down. Jaywalk, score goes down. Say something against the government online, score goes down. And you cannot function in a society with low social credit. You cannot buy plane tickets, activate a gas pump, buy groceries, buy train tickets with a low social credit score. But how do you convince people in the US and Western countries to accept this complete invasion of privacy? How do you overcome the founding documents and its fundamental rights set forth in the Bill of Rights? By causing complete chaos, breaking down culture, and increasing crime to the point where the population is begging for order. And that order comes in a digital police state, where every action is monitored and offenders are immediately known. And what is the instrument used to bring about this chaos? Woke. The globalists have enlisted neo-Marxism leftist ideology to bring about this state of chaos. Let's begin with culture. American culture is rooted in conservative Christian values, men and women fulfilling traditional roles, having large families, holding religious views, owning land, loving your country, having a tight-knit community that self-polices themselves, self-individualism and individual rights. When this culture is strong, it's impossible to break down. So, how do you do it? First, you need a philosophy that is the antithesis to this. Enter Marxism. But it didn't work. Why? Because Marxism calls for revolution, and a comfortable population with all their needs met does not want revolution. If family, safety, and jobs make people comfortable, then Marxism cannot win. So you amend it. You change parts of it to fit the new world. You switch the rich versus poor to the victim and the oppressed. You change class war to culture war, identity war. You take classical Marxism as a base, then develop things like critical race theory, which says that society was created by whites for whites, to make all blacks and other races to believe that they are oppressed. You take queer ideology and you make people believe that they are born in the wrong body and oppressed by a society that forces them to conform to gender roles. You take postmodern philosophy and convince people that subjective reality is fake and that they themselves determine what reality is. You attempt to use education to indoctrinate children into this woke leftism with things such as social emotional learning, to convince white children that they are the oppressor and need to become anti-racist, and to convince black children that they are oppressed and want revenge. And when parents disagree with what teachers are indoctrinating children with, you enact laws that lessen the rights parents have over their children. You enable children to think that gender dysphoria is okay, and that sterilizing themselves by cutting off their breast or genitals will bring them happiness. And when a child is being convinced of this, to not tell their parents. And enact laws that state that a parent who disagrees with a child's transition is labeled as child abuse, thereby giving control of the child to the state to indoctrinate without the pesky parents getting in the way. You then take this army of indoctrinated leftists and instruct them to become activists. And that's where we are now. An entire generation of indoctrinated children being pushed to want revolution, to overthrow the system, to finally give Marxists what they wanted all along: communism, which is basically the rule of the powerless by the powerful. This is no different than what we had when kings and queens ruled their subjects without any rights, any freedom of speech, or any property. And this experiment of individual rights and power to the many that was pioneered during the French Revolution and has ruled most of the world since then will die a quiet death.